This is TWiT.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. If your IT training isn't raising your team to its highest level, you need ACI Learning. Prepare for certification examinations with practice questions. Retake tests so you're ready before you take your exam. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit for information on a free 2-week trial for your team. One of the things that happened, I was starting to say and didn't finish the sentence while I was gone, is the Vision Pro SDK, the software development kit, came out, which means we learned some things, right? The VisionOS SDK.
A lot of people now that people have the ability to actually run VisionOS inside the simulator, they're learning things like, oh wow, there's actually spotlight search in here, and wow, here's what the keyboard actually like works and looks like. And we're finding out a whole bunch of other tidbits, like a couple separate stories about how, like, okay, so now that the Vision Pro will stop working if you are in motion to a certain degree, to prevent people, I don't know, from like using it while driving or operating a vehicle. There's a safety zone of something like 10 feet. Like when you're in a fully immersive environment, you're inside a box that's about 10 feet across to prevent you from, I don't know, wandering out a window or something like that. Lots of little details that we haven't been figuring out before.
But there is a traveling switch that you can flip. Says I'm on an airplane and I'm watching a movie. So they clear, we learn a lot about what I think some people, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the sense from some people's social media posts that people who spent a lot of time working with ARKit were a little disappointed to see that a lot of the work that they had done would not be applicable to Vision Pro. Did I get that right?
Well, yes and no. So what I would say by that is that all the work that you do in these areas, ARKit may not line up as far as the code goes, but understanding how things work.
Oh, of course.
And understanding things that you have to think about. But that's, from a coding perspective, that's, in my opinion, a lot more important, is the understanding of how to interact with things. Writing the code is going to be a little bit more work, but I think that you also don't want them to be trying to figure out how to be backward compatible with something they thought was going to work 3 years ago.
Exactly.
So I think, but I think that what I've learned over, doing a lot of immersive work over the last, 25 years, is that doing a lot of it means that you understand what you should do next. And the coding stuff, or for us, the shooting the footage or building the footage, you can start thinking in that terms, and that has been far more useful than learning any individual tool or process.
Did you get to play with Reality Composer Pro, which was also released with the SDK?
I haven't played with it yet. I have watched a lot of videos on it, and we're going to be doing some stuff in office hours with it. We're going to have some labs where we really dig into it. It's really powerful. And watching the videos has me really excited about it. Probably the best, I think I mentioned it before, probably the best nodal system that I've ever seen. Just
no kidding.
Pure pretty. It is like, a lot of these that we use are fairly functional, but no one really thinks about how, only Apple would worry about exactly how the little nodes are connected and exactly, how everything gets fit together. So on that, I'm sure that's just as functional as Unreal Engine or any of the other ones. It's functional, but it looks nice. As someone who used to have to design those nodes, I immediately opened it up and I was like, oh, that's. I wish I had thought of that. That looks really nice. So
it is. So the idea is you can import your 3D stuff.
You can set up a lot of functions
into Xcode, right?
Yeah, you can set up a lot of functions that you're going to hand back to Xcode. So basically in Reality Composer, you're able to build your scenes. That would be really arduous to do with your code. And so you can build out the scenes and things that need to be triggered, but those can all be kind of put together and visualized and kind of worked out inside of this environment. And it's got, adding surfaces and particle systems and lighting and working with the models and placing them in place, and all of that can be set up inside of this environment. And it's what's missing in a lot of the other immersive environments, was really good tools to kind of put that together that aren't just Unreal and Unity.
Right. And it'll import USDZ and other assets, and then working with Xcode to make it a program with these assets.
Right. So it's got all the hooks in there. So you're basically building something that has hooks available that you're going to be able to call from Xcode.
Yeah. Okay. So we got our first look at that.
It's gonna, but the weird thing is going to be that people, all these developers are going to be writing really cool apps that will work for this simulator, but it's going to be at least a year before they figure out, is this going to, have they placed objects too close to the viewport, too far away from the viewport? How comfortable is this app going to be to use for more than 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? And it's still one of the big unanswered questions of the Vision Pro is how long is anybody going to be able to use this given the limits of VR as they've implemented them?
I don't know. I mean, some of the developers will get units, right? Like everything we're hearing is that next month they're going to have these developer kitchens basically in 6 major cities where people can come who are developers and use it. And then they've been upfront and saying that they're going to open, the ability to get a developer unit, and you're going to have to apply, and you're going to have to, it's obviously going to be limited. In fact, I think the phrase they use is your team, which implies that like maybe James Thompson need not apply. I don't know. But
he's a solo developer.
But what I've heard is that the hardware is pretty final, and that the reason that it's not shipping is twofold. One, they can't make enough of them. And two, the software is not all there yet. But if the hardware is pretty final, then the developer kits will probably be pretty real. And so developers may, in fact, be the first people outside of Apple to have a realization about how long can they go using this thing. Now, that's not the whole wide world, and the developer pool, is not as diverse as the whole wide world, even the whole wide world of purchasers of this product. But I feel like we're going to start getting a sense. If they're NDA'd, it'll be through the grapevine. But I think we'll start getting a sense later this year from developers and other people who've used it, who are actually able to sit there for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours and say either it's fine or it's terrible, and we'll have a better idea.
I did hear some complaint from the open source community that Apple's tools, SwiftUI, Reality Kit, AR Kit, Reality Composer Pro are all proprietary. And there exist analogs in the open source world. I'm sure, Alex, you have a rebuttal to that.
I don't think Apple cares. Like, this is their,
and nor do I, right?
Nailed it.
I don't think
give these away for free, right?
I mean, the bottom line is that trying to, like, in open source, now you have the GNU license that is a huge problem if you start building the apps that you want to sell. And so having, incorporating like everything that every large company that I work for, I have to sign a contract that says I will not use any open source software. Like, it is literally like in every contract, you'll do all this other stuff and you will not use any open source software in any part of the development of doing this because of the way the licensing works. And so they don't want to have most for-profit companies don't want to have any part of using anything with an open source license. And so sure, but that and Apple is going to build something that's going to work on their platform, and they're not worried about they're not really worried about interoperability except for Unity. And that allows them to innovate and move as fast as they want to move. This is a brand new thing. Why would they tie themselves into the past?
Yeah,
I don't see any upside for them.
Yeah. I just wanted to give you the chance to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
On the other hand, at least there was some report, I think I put in the show notes, that it's going to support like 3D web technology. So at least it's not going to be isolated that.
Yeah.
WebXR.
What is WebXR? Is that a Pixar standard?
No. So what's interesting is, and what you can always see from a company when they do this is that they are. A company wants to control everything that makes them different and commoditize anything that is just a cost of production. And so,
by the way,
is something
if you have your highlighter with you, underline that sentence that you just said, because that is really a fundamental concept in all of this. Say it again, Alex.
So any company, all the companies, they want to control the things that make them different. So they want absolute control over those, and they want to commoditize anything that increases their cost of production or makes it harder that they're not going to do. And so you can tell when a company wants things to be open source, when Apple wants to make things open source, that's something they want to commoditize.
They want to let somebody else do the work, and because it's not a differentiator, it doesn't help the platform.
And it also, it's not going to be something that they care about in the future. So like HLS, they created HLS, right, and they made it widely available because they need to be able to stream to those things, and they want everybody to use it. And so we'll make it free and make it easy for everybody to use. And when I say open source, I mean they may open source it or they may make it just free. but they're going to, they don't want a lot. What Apple didn't want is a lot of other formats streaming out, so because then they have to support them. And so by having one that is really good, and even now we have to think about it, HLS and Dash and so on and so forth. And so anyway, the so you'll see the WebAR, WebXR. I think it's most of the things. Yeah, WebXR tools are part of that. Also, they're not like Apple is. They're streaming. They're doing the streaming is the MVHEVC. So that is but that's a standard, and that standard's been around since I think 2015. Although not a lot of people have used it because just as that standard came out, 3D kind of fell. The bottom fell out of 3D at the time. 3D just keeps on coming up. Like every couple of years, we go, oh, like right now, there's this huge rush. All of us are trying to find 3D rigs. Those camera rigs that we were using for all those 3D films. Suddenly, everyone's trying to who's got the rigs? Like there's warehouses of people that have fortunately kept a couple of rigs that were all.
Yeah, we were talking about that. You have that. What is it? $30,000. Ozo
there's a
behind you.
I have a $60,000 Ozo right there. I don't even know if it'll work though. It's like I haven't turned it on for a long time. But but there's these big rigs that they use for film that were like $60,000 rigs, and now they're like $10,000. And then there's the Canon. I think I don't know. They must have known something was going to happen, but they have the R5C with a dual lens on it, and it can't stream. But a bunch of us. I was kind of surprised that Canon, when they came out, I was like, why are they releasing that camera? Now it makes more sense because that's going to be a great acquisition tool for the headset. So anyway, there's a couple, a lot of us are trying to figure those things out, but the MV-HVEC format is basically give me a hero eye. So this is let's say my left eye is my hero eye. And then give me the second eye is going to be compressed into the hero eye. So that means that it saves space. You're not sending two whole frames to somebody for stereo. It only does the delta for the right eye if the left eye is hero. But if you only have 2D, if you're watching on your phone, you just see the left eye. And so those are the kind of things but that makes it, more efficient, in that process. And so that's the kind of thing that's a standard. That's MPEG. It's not something that Apple's making up. And you can tell that Apple doesn't want to make up things that it wants everybody using so that it's easier for it to do, but it does want to control its code, on how you build it out.
And if they're supporting this in the web, that means that if in 5 years from now, as Alex keeps saying, the ability to see what this IKEA bookcase looks like in your house, it becomes a thing. It would be very, very much improved if you could do it through the web rather than, by the way, yes, want to see what this looks like in your living room? Download and install this app, which will only take X amount of time. I mean, if this does become a world standard, it's a very cheap way for Apple to make this, to take the advantages of a world that uses 3D in the web without actually having to commit to dumbing itself down to Meta's idea of 3D.
Yeah, and the by the way, like with Amazon, if you go through Amazon on your phone and you look at furniture, because I'm replacing something underneath my TV right now, whatever the thing is, it will say, "Hey, do you want to see this in your scene?" All you got to do is click on the little button and move your camera back and forth a little bit, and boom, it pops right into your living room. So that stuff is already, and a lot of people have been built. Amazon had a whole team in building that for quite some time. So that's been in the works for a couple of years, and it's already available on the phone. Obviously, it'll be more useful in the headset. But it also means that if you go to any web page supporting the web VR or AR or XR, those web pages, when you open them on a web page inside of your Apple, you can just click on it and rotate it around, and you'll see it in 3D. So it's going to be pretty. That makes, as Andy said, it makes it much easier for a lot of folks that don't believe in what Apple's doing to publish something that just happens to work on the headset.
Already, it's been out 6 days. There are already apps. iMore had a list of developers are already working on apps for Vision Pro. Here are 5 we love.
It's a gold rush.
It's a gold rush.
Yeah. Especially for the first ones that are out there. We don't know how well they'll work, but you have a bunch of people that at some point will have spent $3,500 and spending another $5 on an app or $10 on an app to see how it works, especially when a large number of them are developers and they're just trying to figure out what it works, how it works and what it does. They're probably going to spend, so if you're one of those first apps that's being recommended, if you're one of the first apps that gets a little press, if it gets a little push, it's not like you're going to make $10. It's going to be millions. And I've talked to other developers that have done this in the past where they launch things right out of the gate and, they have a $250,000 week. Now they may not see anything after that, but it's like, a bunch of money came in. So I think that you're going to see a lot of that, a lot of people trying to be in that first tranche, and that first tranche will probably last about a year.
I bought a ton of stuff when I got that Quest Pro. Go ahead.
No, or at minimum to basically advertise to the world that, hey, look, I know how to program apps for this thing. Perhaps you should hire me for $250,000 and give me dental and medical care.
James Thompson was on a week ago. The next day, the SDK comes out. PCalc is already available.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he got it up and running as the iPad app, and then got it up and running in the simulator as a native app. But I would say a lot of the developers, especially the indie developers who are going to be showing up in these kinds of stories and are posting their things to social media, they are just really enthusiastic about being able to take their skills as an Apple platform developer to a new platform and figure out where it's applied. So I would say that the primary thing driving most of what I've seen is not like I want to be seen or it's a gold rush to just be noticed months before the product ships, right? There's not a lot of value there, but a lot of these people are like, oh, my app does X. Can that be a Vision Pro app? And exploring, and they're doing it in public, which I think is a lot of fun. But Steve Troughton-Smith, who does a streaming audio app called Broadcast, he showed me a video, it was on Mastodon, where he's taking his little player and I kept saying I want it to turn into a radio essentially that I can put anywhere. And he's got a minimized view of it that he's been working on where you can put it on a table in your kitchen, and then wherever you are, you can hear it playing in the kitchen, which is really cool. And I think there's a lot of enthusiasm right now among people who are already invested in these platforms, the Apple platforms, trying to figure out what their existing software does. I think that there will also be a wave of people writing new software, but this is that first little rush. It's like when the iPad came out, where it's oh, can I get it up and running on the iPad? And they're just enthusiastic about it.
Is it Catalyst?
It's early days.
Is it a Catalyst-like environment that they're using?
No, I think the iPad app, it's literally iPad app emulation. They're literally just running it just as you would on a Mac. You're running the native iPad app unchanged, and then they make some changes and they do a build target for VisionOS, and that gives you the frosted glass look and all of that, which is not there. You can tell when you're using an iPad app because it looks like an iPad.
So this is Troughton-Smith's broadcasts on the Vision Pro SDK.
Yeah.
And you can see that that big screen in the background, that's just the iPad app. And then he's popped out into a player into the 3D space. So that's cool. It's not what, it's not.
They're working on it.
They're working on it.
What I want is I want a 3D object. I want a thing that looks literally, I can pull out a thing that looks like a radio and set it somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's my broadcast player, right? I'm intrigued by the idea of apps as physical objects. Since we're getting super skeuomorphic here, let's do it. I want to see if you're an audio player like Steve Troughton-Smith's broadcast, I would love to see literally a physical object I could set somewhere.
And when you work through the channels, it's got
sure. The more skeuomorphic, the better, I think.
That's interesting. It does. It calls for a skeuomorphism, doesn't it? Apple has abandoned it, but
but I don't know if that's ever. I don't know if that's never really worked.
Is it transitional, Andy, or is it long term?
I think that everybody's going to have their chainsaw moment with this, where you get your first chainsaw, the first thing and everything you want to do in life is cut things with this chainsaw. And so I think that as people start to write their own virtual reality apps with Vision Pro, it's the natural thing is, wow, I've got a podcast player that should actually look like a radio, and I should be able to put it on top of any physical surface in the real world around me. But I think it's going to take a little while for everybody to kind of settle down and realize that that's cool. That's wonderful. That's a really great demo. It's not the most convenient way to access and to be using. I know you're really, really happy about the fact that you've used the virtual soundstage so that when you turn to the left or when you back away from the virtual radio, the placement of it and the sound field moves and the volume moves. But actually, I just want to be able to listen to it very, very clearly, no matter where my focus is.
Yeah, we don't know.
Remember that the Magic Cap, that first pre-Newton message pad control was completely skeuomorphic, where the use the paradigm of, hey, here is your house. Here is your inbox tray on your desk. Hey, look, here is let's go into the living room where you've got your radio. And again, it was a really cool demo, and it kind of made sense on some sort of Vulcan logic way. But then again, when you give people, or here is a menu with a list of 5 items, and you simply click on the one that you want to use. Let's see how long people use the skeuomorphism beyond like the first week or two.